Cool. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen, just close all my dodgy stuff. Can we just make sure I'm going to go into presentation mode? Could you guys let me know if you're seeing slide formats or presenter formats?
Slides.
Awesome. Awesome. So you're not seeing any of my dodgy show notes, right? Cool.
No.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you super very much for having me. I love doing user groups, and you know, it's always great to see the number of people that join and all you awesome people that are attending. I wish it was in person, because then we'd definitely be having a beer or one at the pub after this. But unfortunately, it's all virtual. So yeah, let's make hay while the sun shines. I just think I'm going to try something new from an introduction perspective. We get a QR coded, right? And yeah, so my name is Chris Huntingford. I work for Microsoft as a partner technical architect. That's kind of a weird role, but what I get to do is, number one, I get to play with all the cool techie stuff. So I get to go and do like research, work with the product group, understand what's coming up from a technology perspective, and then articulate that back through to the Microsoft partner base. So I work with a number of you on the call. A number of you know me. Don't worry, I'll try to keep it clean today. And that's essentially what I do, but sort of outside of that, I do loads with Andy and Scott and a number of you on the call in the community. So I'm otherwise known as the tattooed CRM guy on Twitter. Don't know why I chose that name. And I do have a random Power Apps tattoo. I'm not going to tell you where, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So let's keep it that way, right? So Andy and the team invited me to do this session for you. And, you know, roadmap's always interesting because kind of anything goes, right? I mean, there's just so much in there. And I found myself sort of going through like the licensing documentation and then the release documentation, and then I end up in a dark path, and you'll sort of see where this is going, right? But today's session is going to be roadmap, and then roadmap. Now, I'm totally 100% aware that some of you are absolute licensing ninjas. That's cool. You're more than welcome to ask questions. They will be kindly disregarded. No, I'm kidding, they won't. I'll do my level best to answer them. But I'm going to start this session off in probably one of the most controversial ways ever. And I know I'm going to regret this, but let's just go ahead anyway. So we're going to address the elephant in the room sort of straight off the bat. And I'm under no illusion that this is probably going to descend into a pit of disillusionment and a very dark space. Yeah, we're going to talk about the team member licensing. So I just want to tell you, I'm not a massive licensing ninja. I do know a thing or two, but it's only because I was part of what they called the licensing bloodbath last year and thought I would up my skills. And yeah, team member licensing, awesome. So there's going to be some hard restrictions on team member licensing, as some of them have already come in. Some of them will be coming in. It depends on the type of implementation you've got. Now, I'm pretty certain that a lot of you on this call have probably done some implementations with team member licensing. That's cool. The whole idea behind team member licensing was it was meant to be designed for users who were not really tied into like a specific function, so that had a sort of cross-dimensional view of data, or very minimalist data, and a lightweight view across the organization. So the whole idea is that it was meant to be for very basic interactions like employee service, self-service, updating basic information, T&E. The whole idea was that with team member licenses, it was supposed to enable you to read Dynamics 365 data. And then sort of once the data was generated, you know, you could do basic interactions with it. It was not supposed to give you access to custom applications, not supposed to provide you with administrative privileges. Okay. So if you look at the list of team capabilities, you've got the ability to read access to Dynamics 365 data. Okay, you've got cut access, create, update, delete access for specific entities, including things like activities, notes, blah, blah, blah. So you can kind of understand that, but then also up to an additional 15 entities, which is awesome, right? So 15 additional entities. And then you had core CDS entities that weren't restricted. Some key restrictions, I remember when we implemented the account restrictions, there was an uproar. It is what it is. And from a case perspective, users could only work on cases from a self-service point of view. Now, that's all good and well. I think, in my opinion, the hard restrictions have come in from a team member specific perspective because people, quite frankly, have been doing things that they shouldn't be. And, the concept of the ability to kind of, leverage any license and the honesty is the best policy sort of approach here has gone out the window a little bit from a number of organizations because, that's not what's happening, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that work really hard to build that functionality within the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform stack. And unfortunately, some people just don't view it that way. So there's a couple of enforcement details that are coming in. There will be there are 3 core app modules that team members will have access to. So there'll be the sales application or the team member for sales and team member for customer service. And then there'll be the project resource hub as well, but that's a little bit in the air. So the 2 core ones will be your 2 team member applications. Those are the only 2 apps you'll have access to, right? There are customizable security roles for each application from a conformance perspective and a compliance perspective. So you will have the ability to assign a user role to a specific user from a team member point of view, and then they will have access to those 2 specific applications. So those of you that have built in a ton of other random apps and just decided to use team members, it's kind of important that you understand that this is not going to necessarily be the case. And then there's a subset of entities that will be aligned to this, right? So you'll be able to access up to an additional 15 entities from Common Data Service directly within these applications. Now, a lot of people are probably fuming angry with this right now, but if you had obeyed the rules, you wouldn't be. And that's just me being quite down the line on this one. But essentially, this is going to be hard enforced. And unfortunately, it's not going to go away. And I do think that it's important that we all understand that because, once this takes place, we'll be able to really understand the type of licensing that can be assigned to specific users from a team member perspective. And also, we're obeying the rules, right? Which is good. So those are the 3 applications that you'll have access to after the enforcement takes place. There are going to be some rules around current customers with agreements and current customers with implementations of Dynamics. But as it stands, if it's a new implementation, this is the way it's going to be. The thing that interested me the most, though, especially from a configuration perspective, was when I started to look into this, and actually, one of the people you need to take whose blogs you need to look at is Yuka, and I'll share the blog URL after this. But when I did a session around team members with Mario at the D365 Saturday event, we got a number of questions around, well, what can they actually do? And the answer is, well, work within 3 apps. Okay, very, very basic configuration. There is something you need to know around this as well, though, with regards to the licensing. And if you're very focused on team member license and you're looking at paying a smaller fee for some good functionality, there are other ways, there are other things you can look at. But at the moment, you will be enforced and you will be only allowed to use 3 of the applications. So when you get into design time, this is the thing that really interested me because I kind of thought, like, how's this going to work? What's actually going to happen from a design perspective? Like, what happens when we start just like chucking entities into the team member application? And actually, it does hard enforce it, right? So you can see this app requires a license. If you don't have the appropriate license access, blah, 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 please contact your system administrator, the usual type of error. But then you can actually see this operation failed as it exceeded the maximum entity limit of 15 entities for the app. Wow, that's pretty interesting, right? So we've never really done that before up until this point. But again, it's more around the design guidelines. So when you're all configuring and customizing solutions, you kind of build and then you go like, oh, okay, well, what licensing do we need to think about from a build perspective in this scenario? But what's awesome is that there are guidelines here. So it does tell you, okay, well, these are the types of things you need to focus on. There's the hard limit. This is, you're blocked from doing this. Remove an entity, add another one. There we go. So from an app perspective, I actually think this is a really, really good thing. So how do you assess the impact? This is awesome, right? It's the reason I put in this flowchart, not because I mean it's pretty self-explanatory, to be quite frank. But the reason I stuck this in was when you look at the big red box, all right, and you've got 2 things. You've got, okay, is it a classic web interface or is it the unified client interface, right? The changes will take effect after April the 1st for new organizations. So that's pretty important because that's kind of, well, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. The second thing is that existing organizations or existing instances, all right, will have a grace period until 31st of January 2021. So it was the 30th of September 2020. But I think because of all this horrendous COVID stuff and the place that a lot of organizations are in, they've extended that. So you kind of got to get your affairs in order, which is really good. It does give you some time. And there is, I promise you folks, this is not the end of the world. There are ways around this, not around it, but there are ways to sort of, there are other things you can look at without breaking the bank, right? The thing is also to remember that you need to start testing team member apps and you need to start planning. So plan, don't just assume, oh, it's the end of the world. You know, there are, I would go through a full-on testing process to understand exactly what you can and can't do with the team member applications. And you can see the link at the bottom. They've actually referenced the dates in that link, so that really helps. So very, very important. Just make sure you absolutely remember that that 31st of January date is going to be D-Day. Right, a couple of other things that I thought would be quite useful. So what I did was I actually snaffled around all over the place between Microsoft slides and various other places to find a slide that actually had a really good breakdown of where to look and where to get information from. And I stumbled across this one and I thought it was really cool, right? So it's got some pretty good information around where you can learn more around team members, what to do around the pricing, etc., etc. And I thought I'd chuck it in the deck just to make sure that everyone's got a sort of reference point of where to go and what to do from an information perspective. Okay, a couple of other things that I found. This was also from the same deck, was from a resourcing perspective. If you're a partner, if you're a if you're a seller, if you're external like a customer, there's also loads and loads of places that you can go and get information from. So once again, just another slide that I thought would be quite useful to you to make sure that you have the right access to the right information at the right time. Okay, so team members going, and our hearts bleeding at the sound of them sailing off into the distance. Well, not going, but being limited. I thought I'd give you a couple of ideas of stuff you could do from a licensing perspective without breaking the bank. Now, remember, this is down to interpretation. Okay, so there are some clear, fast, and hard guidelines in the actual licensing guide that will talk to you about leveraging, different entity types and whatnot. But something that I found was pretty cool was that I can't remember. I think the team member license cost like $8, if I remember, in dollars. And from what I know, it's something like that. I mean, I must absolutely get my facts straight on that one. So it's not super expensive. But then when you go and look from a Power Platform point of view at the per app, per user license, so you've basically got a license in the Power Platform that allows you to access various entities across different areas within the common data service. And you got the ability to build out these epic solutions and epic applications for £7.50 a month. Whoa, okay. So backtrack a little bit, right? You've got these team member apps, which you can have within the context of Dynamics to have things like sales and customer service. You're paying X amount for a team member, but you're limited to 15 entities. But on the other side, I can go and buy myself a Power Platform license. I can access various entities within the Dynamics stack that are non-restricted. Big caveat, big star on that, okay? Go and read up what a restricted entity is. Make sure you understand what it is. It's very, very important. But effectively, it's an entity that exists within Dynamics that cannot be accessed outside of the stack without paying for a Dynamics 365 license, okay? So backtrack. I've got this solution, this per app, per user, this license that I can use to go and build out my own set of entities that are limitless. I can create a model-driven app with loads of different custom entities. I can actually build 2 apps with this license. I can build both a canvas and a model-driven. I've got access to a portal. I can use premium connectors, use the common data service. This is epic, right? I can even access some of the restricted. I can even access some of the D365 entities. So with your current application as it is from a team member perspective, if you're sitting with an app with 15 custom entities and that's it, you're not leveraging any of the Dynamics functionality, and all of a sudden you've been put into the world of using these 2 core applications or 3 core apps, don't worry. There's the Power Apps per app per user license that you can use to go and build out these same types of solutions. So I would really encourage you, from a testing perspective, when it gets down to this, and I know some of the organizations I'm working with at the moment are doing this right now, when it gets down to this, what I would do is take a look at what you've got from a team member perspective, understand it. Don't necessarily reverse engineer everything. Just understand what's being used first. If you find yourself in the world of, well, you know what, I can move over to a per app per user license. Awesome. That's fantastic. And you're not limited by the number of entities. So it's definitely something to take a look at. And then from a licensing perspective, I decided to put that up there just in case you didn't know, but this can be accessed via the website. So you're paying £7.50 per user per app per month, and that gives you the entitlement to those 2 applications, plus a load of other good shebang that you might not necessarily have had before from a team member perspective. Okay, so I want to pause there, right? Go out of presentation mode. Fear for my life as I look at the comments.
Does Chris,
any
got...
yeah.
Can you mute yourself for a sec?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we've got some questions. I'm a bit conscious that we could spend a lot of time talking about team members licensing. Do you want to field some questions now, or do you want to wait to the end?
That's probably a good. I can take 1 or 2 now. Okay, but I think what's a good idea on this type of thing is that I'm willing to run a session off the back of this. I'm going to regret saying this, but around things like licensing. So if you guys do need to chat, I do it all the time. But remember, the only information I have is from the licensing guide, okay, and what's available on the net. I have no secret sources in Microsoft that are going to give me more information. So you won't be able to use me as a mechanism to get things changed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Okay, shall I cherry pick a couple of questions? So something that you may or may not know, how long will the old team member SKU be alive? I assume, does it expire at the end of January next year?
Awesome question. So customers on the old team member license will not be impacted by this change. Customers on an enterprise agreement, EA, can continue using the old team member license until old user rights until their next renewal, provided that the renewal occurs prior to December 31, 2020. Any renewal occurring after this date will be on the new team member license. This is the good one though. Customers who have a sign up through a CSP program can continue to auto-renew the old team member license if they are signed on prior to October 1, 2018. Any new customers who acquire team member licenses after October will by default be on the new license SKU. So that's the FAQ that I ripped out.
That's a good one. So it's essentially saying that if you're in that window from after October 2018 to now, you actually could carry on when you renew if you're under an EA.
Yeah, and don't quote me on that, but that's what it seems to say in the text. But yeah, just
I guess
watch
some limited.
Yeah.
At some point it's gonna be restricted properly, isn't it?
Definitely.
Okay.
Just the thing here, guys, and I'm going to be quite candid with you, is that because of the abuse on the team member license, the pushes to go towards the per app per user license, where you can access a number of the non-restricted entities within Dynamics. And please do yourselves a favor. In fact, I'm going to do it for you, right? Hopefully nothing's dodgy is open. If I go to 365 restricted entities, you can see this comes up a lot. If you go into the restricted entity list, and Ryan, I saw you posted a picture there, a comment there on opportunities. I didn't read it completely, but opportunity at the moment is not a restricted entity. So I can actually access that entity through a Canvas app if I need to. Right.
So Ryan's question is, do team member licenses allow users to access entities like opportunities, complex entities?
So as far as I know, they do. They say that you can leverage existing entities within the Dynamics 365 stack, but you're limited to within the context of the app. And
so Chris, just for clarity, the reason I asked the question is that, well, one, obviously the complex entities is listed on that webpage, well, as a link to that webpage you brought up, but two, right at the top of that, it says the topic is only applicable for the older Power Apps Plan 1 and Plan 2 licenses, and not the latest Power Apps per app and Power Apps per user plans. And I think somebody else, John Clark, had raised a question about when the list will be updated. So I think like everybody, I think, the issue with the team member license for me isn't so much that I want to abuse it, it's that Microsoft seem really unclear on what they're doing with it. And so I feel, obviously, my situation, we're in the middle of a migration online. I feel so reluctant to even use a team member license at all because it's changed so many times since Microsoft brought it out. And so if I use it and I go, oh, that's great, my users can use opportunities, and we sign an EA, that locks us in for 3 years, and then the sands shift, we're then stuck with a license I can't use.
Yeah, and it's a common problem across most organizations. So I guess the whole idea is that, for me, I feel like the push is to the per app per user license, because you can access Dynamics entities from there. But I get what you're saying. Just to quickly make something very visible over here. What it does over here is it actually says the topics out of date, refer to the licensing guide. And please remember, I'd rather be honest with you than not. Transversely, when you go to the licensing guide, it says review this restricted entity list. So quite honestly, I've made this problem very visible within the licensing and the corp team, and they're busy working on that right now. There's another thing I want you guys to just please do for me real quick. There's a chap by the name of Steve Mordew. Absolutely brilliant MVP. I follow him all the time. He interviewed Charles Lamana quite recently, and it's actually in the slide deck that Mario Truba and I did at the Saturday events. I'll send you a link. Go and listen to what Charles Lamana says in that session. And remember, I'm making this purely based on my interpretation of what he's saying here. But he basically says restricted entities won't be a problem or won't hinder you building apps. Whatever that means, I don't know, right? But this is future stuff. And you did say this is a roadmap session, right? So
I'll post a link to that podcast. So I think that obviously, like, we could talk about licensing stuff all day. There are a few more questions in the chat, but if we carry on and then come back to those questions if we haven't answered them, if that's all right with everybody. If anyone else in the chat knows the answer to any questions, then by all means chip in.
Yeah, and folks, just remember, hey, like, the information to this type of stuff is out there. You just need to know where to look. So what Andrew, Scott, Ryan, myself, all of us, what we always do is we try and share stuff on Twitter that promotes this type of thinking, because obviously we NDA through the roof, well, a lot of us. So we try and like leave as much as we can out there to give you guys enough access. But So the next thing I thought I'll talk about, I won't be able to. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through a session without chatting about this, and I'm not kidding, guys. Like, I have to fly through this because there is so much to go on right now. So, robotic process automation. I always thought that this was just going to be a thing that got released, and then people were like, cool, robots and processing, and no. But actually, from working within the team at Microsoft, it's probably one of the biggest things I've ever seen take off. And actually, I've got partners basically beating down the door to learn this stuff, and customers basically going, we want to know more. So I'm not going to go into the technology because the tech can get quite in depth, but I am going to go into some of the business use cases and why this is important for now. Okay. But with Power Automate, when you look at the way that stuff has previously worked, right? Power Automate was really designed to connect to stuff with APIs, manage actions, automate human processes, govern business process flows, and make things easier for people. And obviously augment this stuff with artificial intelligence to make sure that the data we collected was really deemed much more valuable. So like I always say to people, we've just come out of this era where all of you have been to a Microsoft presentation at some where the words big data were mentioned on a screen. And the era in the last 5 years has always been big data. But the thing is, big data is not always good data. And one of the things that Power Automate is really good at is making data awesome, right? So it's kind of like augmenting stuff that you've done with, with very basic pieces of information, plugging that into an AI engine and making it amazing and making it useful. Using those business flows as a mechanism to drive collaboration and communication, but more in a structured way across pieces of data. And then obviously using the APIs available to augment data once again with third-party information, or to grab third-party pieces of information and add it to your data store. The thing we were missing though was the ability to grab data from those gray screen applications and solutions without APIs. So let me tell you something interesting. When Y2K came about, so some of you will remember this, some of you won't. Some of you might not have even been born by then, I don't know. But when Y2K came about, people were like freaking out and lighting bin fires on the road and carrying torches and thinking the world was going to end. And as we thought would happen, it ticked over pretty quickly. I mean, some stuff broke, but it wasn't nearly as bad as we thought. When you look at a lot of organizations out there right now, and I'm going to name some, right? So housing associations, legal firms, financial services institutions, manufacturing, a lot of them have got solutions within their orgs that are actually probably older than some of you on the call, right? Which is pretty scary. And a lot of these solutions don't have APIs. They also don't have ways to integrate. Okay, and they've got some weird back-end database that no one can touch. Like, I'm an ex-Borland developer, believe it or not, and I used to write solutions on top of Interbase and horrible things like paradox tables. Thank God those days are done, right? So here's the thing. We needed a way to get that data. Despite what anyone says to you, the Power Platform is not about building apps. It is about data. The more data you have, the better apps you can build, the more reports you can create, the more automation you can generate, okay? So here's the thing. With UI flows, we knew that we had to find a way to get all this data from these other legacy solutions and into a common data service or a common data store that we could interact with. Hence the birth of UI flows. There are some awesome UI flow solutions, awesome RPA solutions out there already, not mentioning any names. This kind of works alongside those. Now, here's the thing. With RPA, we can get that data now. So we can work with these old school legacy solutions without having Jeff fresh from college manually integrating data between two systems. We can do this automagically using RPA. Scott, that was for you, by the way, not automagically. A couple of things that are already key. Wow, I don't actually know what happened there, right? With RPA, the whole idea is that you record the task. Okay, so it's like using a macro in Excel. I'm not even kidding you. You record the task, automate the task, and then play back. It's super, super straightforward and basic. But there are some things you've got to start understanding around RPA. The typical two types of RPA that you get around attended and unattended, okay? So attended requires some elements of human intervention, whereas unattended, well, it just happens. It's like sorcery, essentially. You've somehow got this information booming back into your solution and coming and building up inside your good data store, and you can't figure out how it's happening, and that's unattended RPA, right? So now things like Blue Prism do some really great stuff around robotic process automation. We're getting there. So we're doing a lot of work around how RPA fits into the current Power Platform landscape. The thing that's important for us is that RPA running on its own is simply a data collection mechanism and a process automation mechanism, okay? RPA running with solutions like Power BI, Power Apps, Dynamics 365 is a weapon, and it's absolutely brilliant because then you're augmenting and automating the way that data is brought in. So a couple of things. We've got the UI Flows connector for RPA that lives directly within Power Automate. You can access it through Power Automate Flows. So you can see over there, there's your little connector. Essentially, you fire that bad boy up, and what you do is you go through a process of doing a screen recorder. So essentially, you'd fire up your application, collect a couple of pieces of information into variables. Once you've done that, you're effectively using Flow to store that information back in. But it embeds itself beautifully within Power Automate Flows, absolutely beautifully. So it's part of the process. So here's the thing. You need something to kick that RPA job off, and that's effectively where your flow comes in, right? So great part that I love. You just got to remember that it is part of the whole stack. So when you're talking about this end-to-end business automation and process automation story, RPA is never just going to live on its own, right? You're always going to have some pieces around it that kind of augment the way the process is running, and that's really key. So just remember, the UI flows we are building on and we are working on a hell of a lot. The uptake is huge, but the key thing here is getting the data you previously wouldn't have gotten. That's the golden tool here, right? So a couple of little things around how UI flows work. There's two types. You've got web and you've got desktop. The web UI flow effectively uses the Selenium IDE, right? And then you can pick the kind of target website that you want to interact with. It does install a quick little add-in within your browser. The desktop one is quite interesting because you're installing the UI flow agent and sort of the same type of process, right? I'm still absolutely befuddled why a calculator was used in this example. I've seen some way better ones, but effectively the UI flow kind of lives as an agent on your desktop, and then you're using that to record the type of interactions and engagements you're having with third-party applications. So to kind of bury that off real quick, one of the key things that's going on from a data collection perspective is RPA. We've gotten super good at APIs and collecting data that way. We've got super good at integration to like third-party sources and things like that. We needed a way to get the data that no one else could get, and that's through robotic process automation. Right, so any questions on RPA before I fly through 5 trillion release notes? I'm just going to assume that we're all good for now. Oh,
Yeah, we got a question.
I like Richard's one, actually. Did you ever find that RPA can give customers an easy out to deprecating their old but useful systems instead of trying to adopt and build a more modern platform? So do you think UR flows are pretty epic? Yeah. So, Richard, I know exactly where you're coming from, and I know the type of stuff that you do. Spot on. The thing here is that a lot of the organizations can't deprecate their old systems. I mean, if you're looking at manufacturing organizations in particular that have these ancient solutions that kind of have stored all this asset history and information for many, many moons, it's super difficult to kind of deprecate that, right? Also in financial services where they're hosting core policy type of information and that kind of thing. So it's a good question. My frame of reference, my frame that I go into when I'm talking to customers around this, and I actually am not supposed to talk to customers, but I do, God help them, is that when I chat to them, I say, listen, the whole idea here is to augment what you've got. We're not here to tell you your baby's ugly. We want to be able to work with what you've got. But if you want to remove what you have, we have the framework and mechanism to do that. So I hope that helps. Right. I didn't see too many more. So what I'll do is I'm going to, by the way, Ferridan, Y2K, man, I thought you were about 18. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly back into my presentation. Let's just make sure we're all good in the head. Right, so Andy, man, you gave me an awesome job here of actually I've got to jump out of there. You gave me an awesome job of presenting roadmap with Dynamics of Power Platform, which is basically there's just thousands of things in there.
Yeah,
right?
just like 45 minutes.
Mate, you know what? So I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell you guys what I did. Okay, but what I found, which is pretty cool, which is literally is this thing. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever seen this. I'm sorry, this is my nerd moment of the day. It's the only time I'm going to do something live. So I always struggle to understand what's being released in each geo. So when I create my common data service environments, I remember creating one for AI builders some time back, and I'm like, why is it not here? This is so dumb. Blah 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 blah. And actually, it's because it only worked at that point. It only worked within a specific geo, right? So I just thought I'll show you this. It's pretty awesome. It gives you the ability to kind of filter by geo and see what's being released in each one and what's not. So this is my nerd moment of the day. You've just got to roll with me on this one. Let's pick UK. There we go. PVA and UK. Cool. We're in both. Power Automates. Awesome. So yeah, it just gives you a really cool way of kind of viewing what's being released in each one and what isn't. So if you haven't seen this, go and check it out. There we go. Okay, that's my nerd moment done. I'm going to go back into my presentation. Sorry, Andy, I'm going to minimize you, man. Okay, so that was the first thing. Here's the thing, right? Guys, I read a lot of release notes because I'm like, oh man, what am I going to show them? There's so much stuff. So I read a ton of release notes. I went on a number of walks around the block. Yes, I obeyed the social distancing rule for those of you that are panicking. Yes, I don't need to hug everyone I see every 2 seconds, despite what you may think. So I thought, what, screw it. I've got a better way of doing this. So I went to some of my favorite community people that I know do release notes. And I started delving through what they had done. And I picked up some core sort of commonalities and what they were talking about and stuff that I was interested in. So I'm going to run you through a couple of those, and some of them are pretty big. Hey, some of them we've been asking for them for ages. Others, I struggle to find the big game changers in this release, if I'm brutally honest. But there are some really interesting ones. So the first one I want to talk to you guys about is sales. Praise the Lord for a different view on adding products to sales opportunities. Seriously, I couldn't. We've been asking for this forever, right? And it's kind of a shopping cart function that you can do from from adding products perspective. I really like it. Just a little bit of a heads up. You can enable the release within your environments, but it doesn't automatically get turned on. You've got to go into the settings area and actually enable this under your sales, under administration settings administration sales. Next one. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to tell you about that one yet. Next one is the PDF documents. So you can also magically create PDF documents directly from records within your common data, within your implementation, and then bring those out, download them as PDFs or save them directly to SharePoint, which is friggin' awesome because we've been wanting to do that forever. It's not like the greatest thing in the world, but I think it's pretty cool. Okay, we can have a debate over the word. This is tomato type scenario. So it's either the Kanban view or the Kanban view. All right. So when you listen to like some people in the States, it's Kanban. When you listen to people in Europe, it's Kanban. So I was going to call it a Kanban view, right? But anyway, this is cool, right? Because it changes the way we interact with opportunities and stuff. So think of it as like this awesome sort of stream where you can view opportunities in different. So think about your process flow, right? Each opportunity has got a business process flow. Well, hopefully it does. This Kanban view effectively allows you to split. It shows you a list of those opportunities split by process or by status. And then what you can do is you can magically drag these, very much like the field service schedule board. You can drag these into the different parts of the view, but then it honors the process and what's required in the process. So when you move it over to the next part of the process, it flicks up a screen and it says, hey, dude, you need to fill out these pieces of data. I'm like, okay, cool, click, 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 and then it adds it to that part of that view. Honestly, it's been, I thought, oh, okay, how good could this be? And then I haven't been able to touch the user experience just yet. But I've watched a couple of videos and stuff on it, and it's absolutely brilliant, right? I think that from a UI point of view, this is going to be something that really helps people sort of engage with the way that opportunities move from step to step. That's also available in the activities, but unfortunately in my release, it's not quite open just yet. There is another view in here for sales opportunities. So you can actually view a calendar view for your sales opportunities as well, which is really awesome. So if you get like loads of opportunities, it'll pop them up into a calendar view, and you'll be able to interact with them from there. And you can see on the top right where it says create view in the screenshot, you just simply click on that. It says Kanban view or calendar view, and then you interact with them from there. Other one really awesome was the simplified administration embedded in the new sales hub, the sales hub. So instead of you having to flick out to loads of other different places and try and engage from an administrative perspective, you can do that directly from here, which is really cool. So any basic stuff that you need to turn on, off, etc., you can do that. One of the biggest things I think in the sales release is forecasting. My gosh, I can't tell you how many organizations in the last 12 years when I've been working with Dynamics that have asked for forecasting. I actually built this for a customer. I built a forecasting module for a customer. It was bonkers. So what's been added is the ability to generate your own forecasting functionality. It is really cool. I was like, how good can this actually be? But it's awesome. It actually tells you, like, from a prediction perspective, how far the salesperson is within the process and like where they see it being predicted. You can add and like do auto adjustments and things. You can have a proper security hierarchy. So you can do this by territory or organization. You can apply a full-on security hierarchy and actually view all of this awesome forecast functionality. I'll tell you what, I've even tried to build this in Power BI and it's been quite tough. And then also, if you've got, once again, the right user roles and permissions, you have the ability to edit this forecast. So if a user's going, I expect A, B, and C to happen at this point, you can do it then. Right. So this is what you call roadmap at speed. Oh, there we go. Sorry. There's your forecast view in the Kanban view, right? So you can move stuff over by process again. I just thought this was a cool little touch, by the way. Next thing is there's a new simplified version of the sales app that's going to be made available. So it's not going to be incredibly difficult for salespeople to interact. One thing I will say is the Dynamics 365 app functionality is epic, right? So the mobile app functionality is awesome. But let's face it, folks, I used to do sales, right? I used to do pre-sales. And one of the things that I sucked at doing was updating stuff and getting information immediately. So this helps you do that quite quickly. So customer service. Whoa, this is an interesting.
Before you move on,
yeah.
I know you're in your flow. I'm getting their feedback. Yeah.
Oh, you're getting feedback.
Sorry, dude.
That's fine.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions on Kanban. I know we've only got like 15 minutes left, but do you know whether you can talk about this or not? Do you know when the Kanban view will apply to cases as well, and also when you'll be able to apply custom business process flows to the Kanban?
Oh no, I thought of the cases one. I thought that was a really cool idea, but you know what? They typically they'll feed functionality like this into the sales app first, and then potentially down. Yeah, I'll check that out though. I've seen some.
If I had to guess, probably October release.
Yeah, I've heard whispers in the trees, but October seems like the right one.
Thanks, dude.
Cool. Is the volume okay?
Yeah, all good.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna quickly shoot back in. I'm probably gonna quickly whiz through this one because this one there's a couple of interesting things that you need to know about here from a case management perspective. So I didn't see like this being the hugest release, but they've seemed to have augmented Flow and embedded Flow beautifully within and I'm talking about Flow, not just Power Automate, Flow, beautifully within the D365 UI. So when you're doing like auto case generation and stuff, you don't have to use the old editors and things. It's embedded in the new UI, and you can use flows to a lot of that as well. Also with your routing and SLA rules, there's a good example of what it looks like within the new UI. Not new UI, unified UI now, I guess. You've got, I don't know why this landed up in the case release, but there's a whole bunch of stuff around capturing notes within rich text, and you can do some pretty cool stuff in there. There's a email editor which kind of gives you the ability to create a new email. It's a sort of hover screen that respects the parent record, so you can create your email, do stuff on the parent record, then shoot back to the email and do your thing. And then finally, praise the good Lord above, the customizable case resolution form. Yeah, it's the old editor. I haven't actually tried this myself. I couldn't see it in my environment. So if anyone has, good on you. But that's pretty awesome, right? A couple of things around SIF, so Omni-Channel Integration Framework and Omni-Channel Engagement Hub. I know we've had SMS for a little while, but there's a whole bunch of other channels coming. Wow. WhatsApp as a channel, that's going to end in tears. Let's just see what happens, right? So field service, this one's awesome. Couple of really interesting things here. So we've got the next gen field service schedule board, really, really awesome stuff. So that's going to be coming out very shortly. They finally replaced the new work hours calendar from CRM version 3 to something that's a little bit more palatable. We've also got there's a new dashboard that's coming out. So that bad boy over there, that's embedded within the D365 UI, and that'll give you access to what's going on from a scheduling perspective and a route optimization perspective. There's this other thing called requirement dependency, and this is interesting. So when, I've built something like this before through customization and config, but what you can actually do is you've got things called follow-on work orders now, and each work order may, have a dependency, which is really interesting. So you can do stuff in order finally. You've got the ability from a technician success improvement perspective to input actual manual time using the timesheet entity, as well as do integrated technician tracking. And this is really cool because you can define the way the tracking works. A couple of things that I thought were going to be really important. I actually have to high five Sean Tabor for this because I did pinch these slides from him. So a couple of things you can do. Remember you had the inspections directly available within the Resco UI, okay? These are coming out directly within field services itself. So I'm really excited about inspections. A lot of people do Canvas apps, use Canvas apps for inspections. This is probably going to be a little bit more bulletproof than that, especially considering of the offline functionality. So if you're in a submarine 20,000 leagues under the sea, you can do your inspections. This is awesome, right? So incident type AI-based suggestions. So when you have a work order, what it does is it goes and snaffles around the other work orders, looks for, it actually suggests an incident type based on what it's found. Very, very, very cool, right? This I think is one of the most key things, because from a game changer perspective, AI is getting embedded in everywhere. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention about sales is the call scripting functionality, which will be embedded in the sales AI application. So you'll be able to do things like call scripting and wrap AI around various phone calls that have happened within your org. Sorry, that was me jumping the gun. D365 for marketing, everyone's favorite product. So when we look at D365 for marketing, there's been some interesting changes, and this product is starting to really, really cement itself within the stack. There's been a number of changes within the way the segments are defined, and leveraging those segments as design templates. So you can do some really creative stuff around the way the segments work. Other thing that's really interesting is contextual-based emails. So yeah, that's awesome. You can build out emails and have them contextually show information based on the information within the system. That's cool. That is really cool. Yeah, probably the winner for marketing from me. Some interesting thing around events. So they've created a consistent form experience within the events functionality in marketing. Events are still quite a beast, so I think that they'll be doing a lot of investments in there, and then obviously creating out things like recurring event types. So you can build out your events, use it as a template, and then generate other events off the back of it. And then with the deprecation of voice of the customer, you'll be able to send Forms Pro surveys out. Wow. Okay, so what I wanted to talk around a little bit was the new stuff from the Power Platform perspective. I forgot the slide animated, so please forgive me. So from a Power Platform point of view, there's been some interesting additions and some changes with regards to the way stuff is coming out. But there's a couple of things I wanted to talk around real quick. So there is an improved offline functionality for model-driven applications. Thank heavens. I think like that was a huge ask from the community. We had it before. It's kind of like, you give somebody the lollipop and then take it away, and then it's like, come on. So there's going to be some really, really awesome changes made and some really, really great functionality coming out around that. Obviously, the single mobile app for Canvas and model-driven apps, so you can download the Power Apps player directly to your phone or your laptop and access both Canvas and Model. Canvas and Model are getting munged together anyway. So there's a lot of stuff happening with those. Like when you build a Canvas application using the Common Data Service, you can actually access the views, and I think the forms will be coming in this one as well. And you're able to embed a lot of the components directly within model-driven applications from a Canvas app perspective. Canvas App Performance Monitor is a really great addition as well to understand what exactly your app is doing, right? The Azure Application Insights, I personally haven't dug into this one as much, but you can get telemetry from the application you've created. One of the ones I find interesting is the large file and image support from Common Data Service. So you can now attach a large file directly into a file field type, and that's now available in the I think it will be available in the Common Data Service, and you'll be able to reference those file types directly through your application layer. And then a couple of other things, you can move applications. It's going to be much easier to move applications between environments from, I would say, the Canvas, the application perspective, not just Canvas apps. So a couple of interesting ones there. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick though was, when we're talking about themes, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of flying through as many of these as I can. When I talk about things like themes, the themes is coming to both Canvas and Model. So when you want to create something really cool and that looks really pretty, you've got the availability to do that directly through both. The responsive Canvas apps is the big one for me. So when you go create new application, and then from data, and then you select Common Data Service, you can create a mobile app. You should be able to do, well, as far as I know, I'm not sure exactly the date that it's coming out, but you'll be able to do that with the responsive apps as well. So much larger applications actually leveraging that data, which is really, really cool. And then you'll have the principal Canvas app pages as well. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Some very, very interesting things around Power Automate. So Power Automate is kind of sticking its head everywhere, which is super cool. So, I mean, when you go into Dynamics, you're seeing lots of Power Automates. When you go into Power Apps, there's lots of Power Automate all over the show. I'm trying, much to the dismay of some of our Canvas app friends, I feel like Power Automate might be winning the show a little bit here, because it's just everywhere. And I think John Levesque will be quite pleased with that. But, there's a lot of integrations. One of my favorite ones is the integration with AI Builder and also AI infused workflows, right? So there's a number of things you can do with Power Automate. And I think even as far as enabling flow within the business process flow steps, one of the core things that we've been asking for a while, I think is very, very important, right? So when we start looking at the different product sets, I think that, that was my secret one. When we start looking at the different product sets, you can start seeing that Power Automate is literally going to be embedded in absolutely everything we do. And same with AI. Everything that's going on right now, especially from the new release perspective, there's just AI all over the show. Okay. Then finally, so one I haven't done loads and loads and loads of research on, but I'd like to get a little bit more involved with this, is Power Automate. I still think they should have called this Power Bot, because it just sounds way more badass. But there's a lot of stuff happening with Power Automate. So there'll be things like additional languages that have been added in there, deeper integration with Power Apps, which I'm very excited to see how they do that. Okay. There was one other one that I've just lost. So, there we go. Images and videos within chatbots. So you'll be able to embed those images and videos. And then there's a couple of people on this call. I'm not going to mention any names, but you know who you are. So you can see at the bottom right, there's a thing called adaptive cards. Well, there you go. I'm not sure of the actual date just yet, but that's pretty exciting. So to wrap up, I hope I've got the right slide here, Andy. I just want to give a shout out to all of the sponsors for this. Massive thank you to everyone that works very hard at the user group. You guys are awesome, and thank you for putting in so much time. We all appreciate it, and we all appreciate you guys getting us together like this. And Thank you very much. So I think that was not exactly on time, but pretty close. And now we can take some horrendous licensing questions.
Mate, great job.
Great. That was hard.
If you could mute me. Yeah, there is so much to get through. I don't envy you trying to present all that, particularly in like 45, 50 minutes. What I'd like to do is wrap up the session, and if you have time to stay on, then and you have other questions, if you can answer them then, or we have the Ask the Expert session later on where we can take questions as well. That's at 4:30. But I just want to say thanks really huge amount to Chris for putting the session together and presenting always. He's such a great supporter of the user group. Thank you so much for that. And we'll be sharing the slides if we can. Sometimes Microsoft slides are not, we're not allowed to share them necessarily, but we'll share those slides if we can. And also post the session recording up on YouTube in the next couple of days. But yeah, again, massive thank you to Chris. Great session, really good turnout. I think we had 140 people online at one point. Yeah, amazing. And yeah, I'm going to have to drop off because I'm going to introduce the next session. But if you want to ask Chris some questions, either stay on the call or we can do the RC Experts session later. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, I'll stick around for a bit. I have 6 minutes. Yeah.
Well, I think in that case, there were a few questions that I'll try and hoover up, but I will put them to you when you have a moment and get back to those people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thanks, everyone.